Hello beauties, today we're going to dupe Blend Bunny's Beauty Below palette. If you want to see me swatch and tell you what shades I've used in this dupe, let's jump into the video. Again friends, we're going to go top to bottom, left to right. I'm going to swatch every shade and tell you what I'm using. For this one, I didn't choose any alternatives, so I have just one option per shade. Let's get swatching. Indigo from Glam Shop is the first shade for the leftmost shade in the top row. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous deep plum matte. For the second shade, I used Graceful Confusion from Sydney Grace. This is a beautiful brown shade with a hint of plum and tiny, I want to say deep burgundy patches throughout. I think the camera's capturing the patches. It's a very special and different shade. And then when you swatch it, it turns into a gorgeous, cool-toned brown shimmer with a hint of plum. For a third shade in the top row, I picked a Winter Storm, which is a pure neutral deep brown from Sydney Grace. For a fourth shade in the top row, I chose Eclipse, also from Sydney Grace. I used a lot of Sydney Grace shades in this palette because I have a lot of browns from Sydney Grace. This one is a little bit more warm toned than Graceful Confusion, just comparing the two shades here for you all. So you can see that Graceful Confusion has a plum shift that Eclipse does not. Eclipse is purely a brown shimmer. And in the swatch, it even has a golden hint, making it feel even more warm toned. These are beautiful shimmers if you ever wanted or needed brown shimmers. For our next one, I picked the shade Fun 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 from Matte About Hue palette of Colourpop. All Colourpop palettes are magnetic friends and they're fantastic, particularly the larger ones for duping palettes that you don't want to spend money on. You can just depot the shades like I've done here and reuse them, repurpose them. The only issue is they don't have the name under the pan. You know, if you want, you can just either make a note somewhere of what pan you took from which palette or stick a label at the bottom of the pans. For our last shade, friends, in the top row, I picked Jupiter's Inferno from Terramoons. This is a beautiful black-based multichrome with a whole lot of shifts. To dupe this palette and figure out what shades would be good dupes for what shades, I used the swatch photos on Blend Bunny's website for this palette. And although this shade looked from the swatches to be just a duochrome, I decided to make it a little funkier and picked a multichrome for it. And I think you all can see all the beautiful shifts of this shade, going from very deep magenta to bronze to gold to green. I even see some pink. Very, very pretty. The first shade in the second row looks like a shimmery lavender, and I decided to pick Fancy Holo to dupe it. Fancy Holo is from Glam Shop, and it's completely holochromatic and gorgeous. I feel like I'm up-leveling this palette by using this shade. It has all kinds of sparkles throughout. It's a pure holochrome with a hint of shift. As you saw, the pan itself has patches of pink in it that when swatched, it blends into the shade and it gives a gorgeous, gorgeous pink shift that you can see in some angles like there. Now getting to a whole series of shades that I yanked out of my Bejeweled palette from Bella Beauté Bar. That palette is no longer available, but if you have it, I've mentioned in a few past videos that that palette has a good number of shades in common with this palette. So I took some of the shades out. Unfortunately, that palette was not a magnetic palette, so I kind of had to yank it out. Not a process that I recommend, because as you can see on the sides here, there is a possibility this one would sort of break, and then I have to repress it. And this beautiful purple matte's original name is Amethyst. Again, if you have Bella Beauté Bar's Bejeweled palette, you can easily dupe this palette by adding a few warm toned shades to that palette. Although our next shade in the palette looks like a pretty simple duochrome pink to gold or coral to gold shimmer, I decided to pick a funkier shade. This is Santa Baby from a Copacetic. I've also used this in one of the looks that I made with this palette. I've already made 2 looks with this palette, with this dupe, in 2 of my videos, both tagged below if you want to check those looks out, and I've used this shade in one of them. Santa Baby is a gorgeous, gorgeous multichrome. From one angle, which I think might be the only angle you can see in my video where I made a look with this palette and used this shade, it looks pink with a shift of gold that you can see at the end here. But then as you can see from a different angle, you have a teal shift going into a blue that blending into the pink gives us sort of a purple at the very end. It's a beautiful shade. Definitely not to be missed. A little flaky, so if you are using it, definitely use a tacky base with it. To dupe the next shade in this row, I chose Vanguard from Sydney Grace. Vanguard might be a tad deeper and maybe a tad more cool toned than the shade in the palette. Again, I'm primarily going by the swatch photos, but Vanguard swatched looks a lot more warm toned than Vanguard in the pan. And this is actually a gorgeous neutral shade. I can't believe I'm saying this. You all know how I feel about neutrals. Our next shade looks like a shimmery magenta, and for it, I picked Tree Skirt from Clionadh. I believe this was a limited edition a couple of years ago, released for Christmas. It's possible that they brought it back and might bring it back again in the future for Christmas. It's a shade I own, and I figured I should use it. It's a beautiful magenta shimmer. It's actually a little bit deeper than what I see on the viewfinder. And it has tiny light blue glitters throughout. Again, friends, when I say glitter, we're not talking about plastic, unsafe glitter. These are mica-based glitters. It's just shifty particles. I think you can see them. Very, very beautiful. It adds a cool toned hue to this shade. And for duping the last shade in the second row, I picked Burgund from Glam Shop, which is a beautiful burgundy matte. If you see tiny glitters, it's remnants of other shades that kind of found their way into this pan. This pan is actually a pure matte shade. And here is the swatch. Again, friends, these shades are a tiny bit deeper than what shows up on camera. This is another shade from Bella Beauté Bar's Bejeweled palette. This is Labradorite. And you can see again on the side that it is possibly at a risk of breaking. Again, I don't recommend you yanking out these pans out of palettes. If you have an easier methodology that wouldn't break these pans when taking them out of a palette, if it's not a magnetic palette, tell the rest of us in the comments below. Otherwise, this is exactly the reason I no longer buy non-magnetic palettes. And I'm so glad that Bella Beauté Bar now seems to have decided to only offer magnetic palettes. To dupe our next shade, I chose Under the Sea from Looxi Beauty. This shade actually looks like a very good dupe, except that it has a gold shift from some angles. So it's really a duochrome, whereas the original shade seems to just be blue shimmer. You should be able to see the gold shift there, and the shift is actually a lot more prominent in person. Our next shade is also from Colourpop's Mad About Hue. As you can see, the pan is smaller. This one is Alley Cat. Alley Cat is a gorgeous deep forest green. Our next shade was kind of hard to decipher from photos, either the photo of the palette or even the swatches. I chose to pick a deep olive sort of green for it. This is Grunge from Looxi Beauty. Again, unfortunately, Looxi doesn't exist anymore as a brand, but I'm sure a lot of you all have this shade because they've had this for a while. And it's a gorgeous shade, and from some angles, it has an olive shift. Now, I think Grunge is a lot more of a complex shade than what's in this palette because you can see that Grunge also has a forest green hue over it with an olive green base. As you can see, Grunge looks olive green in the pan. It's a beautiful shade that I think goes pretty well with the other shades in this palette. So if you have it and you're duping this palette, this is a great option for you. Grunge even has a teal shift in the light. For the next matte, I used another Colourpop shade, but this one is Ochre from Aurora Struck palette, which is a beautiful deep blue. And beauties, now that we're talking, let me also show you my nails. This is from one of Clionadh's Slickadelic collections. I don't recall the name, but I know the shades are still available. I checked on Clionadh's website, and I'll put the names in the description below. And this is Ochre Swatched. The next shade in the palette looks like a shimmery blue. There are a lot of options from the Bella Beauté Bars Bejeweled palette that could go in this spot, but I chose to pick even a more special shade. This is Seance from Devinah. This is from the Lavaux collection. I have a whole review of this collection I'll tag for you all. You can see from the swatch how vibrant and glittery looking this shade is, and also the shifts from ocean blue to purple to magenta, even gold at some angles. This is a pretty flaky shade. Use it with a tacky base. For the first shade in the second row, I picked M51. I already did a look using this shade, and unfortunately, I don't think the shifts of this shade were showing up in that look. Hopefully, the swatches can help you see the shifts. So this is not a black base. It more or less has a burgundy base with a beautiful green to teal shift over it. It actually has a warm toned green shift also. I think the warm toned green shift was very visible from the angle where I did the look, but then in this angle you can see the teal, the pink and purple shifts also. It even has a cool toned purple shift there. Beautiful, beautiful shade. In case I forgot to mention, M51 is from Terramoons. I used Turtle Bay from Sydney Grace to dupe this next shade, which is a beautiful light-toned teal that is a tiny bit muted. For this shade also, you could get something from Bejeweled, but I didn't want to completely ruin that palette, so I decided to pick a single for this one. Colourpop also has a few monotone teal palettes that you can use. To dupe this next shade, I picked Rockstar from Looxi Beauty, which looks relatively similar to this shade. Rockstar, as you can see, has a very mild burgundy undertone with a gold to green to teal shift. Honestly, friends, I don't know why Looxi went out of business, but these shades were $3 each, or you could have picked them up at $2 each in a sale. So maybe that had to do with it. Maybe they should have just priced them differently, because this is a gorgeous, gorgeous shade, and other brands would have sold this for a lot more expensive. Regardless, I'm using a lot of Looxi because I want you all to be incentivized to use the shades you have. Can you also see the bronzy shift there? It's such a gorgeous, gorgeous shade. The shade I used to dupe this next one is Patina from Devinah, which is perhaps a little more green than the shade from the palette. But I purposefully chose a more green shade for my own usage. I didn't want to use too many neutrals here. From the swatches, the next shade in the palette looks like it should be a blue shimmery topper. I decided to go a little bit funkier. You all remember Burnovich? This is number 161. And while you might not be able to see the blue shift from some angles like this one, and instead see the pink shift, there is a gorgeous blue to teal, and it also has a very bluey purpley shift, and would be great with some of those burgundy mattes and shimmers, or even the blue mattes. Again, don't buy new shades if you have beautiful shades like this already in your collection. And this is the blue shift. As I said, you can capture it from a different angle. And for our last shade, I also picked a matte from Bella Beauté Bar's Bejeweled palette. This one is Lapis Lazuli. I love this blue, and I don't own any similar blue shades. And the shade in the palette looked like a great dupe for this one, which is the reason why I chose to pick it. This blue shade was actually the reason why I decided to depot this palette, because I don't have any other blue shades, definitely not a single, and I also don't think I own any similar blue shade in any of my magnetic palettes to be able to use, which is why I thought about depotting this one. If you enjoyed this duping, give this video a thumbs up. My duping playlist is going to be recommended to you on the screen if you want to continue watching more duping videos. If you want me to dupe any particular palettes, ask for it in the comments below. I love you all. Have an awesome day and awesome week, and until next time, bye.